Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Connect podcast, your home for learning English through real-life conversations. I'm your host, Sophia, and joining me as always is the amazing Jason.
Hey, Sophia. Hey, everyone. So good to be here. How are you doing today, Sophia? How's life been this week?
Jason, my week gave me one of those small moments that somehow stopped me completely. Like I was going about my normal Tuesday, and something tiny happened that I haven't been able to stop thinking about since.
I love those moments. What happened?
So I ran into an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in about 2 years, and when I last saw her, she was someone who described herself as not a reader. She said books weren't really her thing. She tried and always given up. And when I saw her this week, she mentioned very casually that she just finished her 42nd book of the year.
42 books in 1 year from someone who said she wasn't a reader.
42 books. And I said, how? What happened? And she looked at me like the answer was almost embarrassingly simple. She said, I just started reading 10 pages every morning before I looked at my phone. That's it. That's the whole thing.
10 pages.
10 pages a day, which is maybe 15 minutes. And she did it consistently. And by the end of January, she had finished 3 books. And something in her identity shifted. She started calling herself a reader. And readers read. So she kept going. And 42 books later, here we are.
That story just gave me chills. Because it's not dramatic at all. There's no moment of transformation, no breakthrough, no extreme effort. Just 10 pages every morning before the phone.
And compounded over a year, it became extraordinary. A library of 42 books, a completely new identity, a relationship with reading she had never had in her entire life, built from 15 minutes a day.
And I think that's what makes it so powerful and so hard to believe at the same time. Because we are so conditioned to expect that extraordinary results require extraordinary effort, big sacrifices, dramatic overhauls, total reinvention.
But what if the most extraordinary results in life come not from the dramatic moments, but from the invisible, ordinary, daily ones? The ones that look like nothing while they're happening.
That question is the entire conversation today.
Today, we are talking about how small daily habits create extraordinary success. And I want to be very clear. We are not talking about productivity tricks or morning routine aesthetics. We are talking about a fundamental truth about how human beings actually change and grow and build remarkable lives, one that most people never fully understand.
And because they never understand it, they keep waiting for the big moment, the perfect plan, the major motivation, while the people quietly building small daily habits are compounding towards something extraordinary without anyone watching.
So here is what we have lined up. Jason and I are going to have a genuine, honest, deeply practical conversation about why small habits are so powerful, why we resist them, and exactly how to build them in a way that actually sticks.
Then we'll break down 5 vocabulary words and phrases to sharpen your English.
And we'll close with a challenge so specific you could begin it before this episode finishes.
Before we go further, if this podcast has added something to your life, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs this conversation today. You never know whose Tuesday you might change.
And here's our question right now. What is the one small habit that, if you did it every single day, would change your life the most? Hold that thought. We're going to come back to it. Let's go. Okay, Jason, let's start with the thing that I think trips people up before they even begin. The belief that small things can't produce big results. Because honestly, it sounds too simple, almost naive. Where does that skepticism come from?
I think it comes from the way we observe success from the outside. We see the finished product, the fit body, the successful business, the published book, the fluent language speaker, and we try to reverse engineer how it happened. And because the result looks big, we assume the cause must have been equally big. A dramatic effort, a radical change, a life-defining decision.
But what we're seeing is the compounded result of hundreds of ordinary days that nobody photographed.
Exactly. We see the outcome, but we don't see the process. And the process was almost always boring, repetitive, quiet, unglamorous.
There's a concept I keep coming back to when I think about this. Imagine a piece of paper, perfectly flat, and every day you fold it in half. Just fold it, one fold. On day 1, it's barely noticeable. The paper is just slightly thicker. On day 5, it's the thickness of a notebook. On day 10, it's as tall as your hand. On day 23, it reaches from the Earth to the Moon.
Wait, actually to the moon?
Mathematically, yes. That is the power of doubling, of compounding, applied consistently over time. And habits work the same way. They don't look like much on day 1. They don't even look like much on day 30. But you keep folding, and somewhere down the line, you look up, and the result is staggering.
And most people quit on day 7 because the paper is only the thickness of a notebook and they expected the moon.
That's the trap. We evaluate the habit on its early results instead of on its trajectory. And early results are almost always underwhelming because that's how compounding works. Slowly at first, then suddenly.
Slowly, then suddenly. That phrase captures something so true about how growth actually happens.
Right. The ice doesn't melt at -2 degrees or -1 degree. It holds, it holds, it holds, and then at 0, suddenly, all at once, it melts. But all the work was happening in those degrees below 0, when nothing visible was changing.
So the person who quits at -1 degree never sees the melt. They just see weeks of effort that produced nothing visible, and they conclude the habit doesn't work.
When actually, they were 1 degree away from everything changing.
That's genuinely one of the most clarifying frameworks I've heard for why people give up on habits. They quit right before the payoff.
Right before, which is heartbreaking and completely preventable if you understand what's actually happening.
Okay, so we understand the power. Now let's talk about why we resist it. Because I don't think the resistance is simply laziness. I think something deeper is going on.
Something much deeper. The first thing I'd say is this. Small habits feel inadequate to our ambitions. When you have a big dream, and most people listening have big dreams, 10 pages a day feels almost insulting. Is this really all I'm doing toward my goal today? 10 pages?
The size of the action doesn't match the size of the desire.
And so it feels wrong. It feels like you should be doing more, working harder, sacrificing more. And that feeling, the feeling that small isn't enough, is one of the most dangerous feelings in the whole journey of building something meaningful.
Because it leads people to either go too big, burn out and quit, or feel guilty about doing small things and therefore do nothing at all.
Both of which produce far worse outcomes than the embarrassingly small daily habit would have.
What's the second reason we resist?
The second one is that small habits are invisible in the short term, and human beings are wired to respond to visible feedback. When you do something and immediately see a result, your brain releases dopamine. You feel rewarded, you want to do it again.
But a habit whose results are only visible over months or years gives you almost no immediate reward.
You go to the gym, and the next morning you don't look any different. You write 1 paragraph, and the book isn't closer to finish in any perceptible way. You save a small amount of money, and you're not noticeably wealthier.
So the brain says, is this even doing anything?
And in the absence of visible feedback, doubt fills the space. And doubt is the enemy of consistency.
So how do you solve the invisible feedback problem? Because you can't rush the compounding. You can't make the results arrive faster.
You solve it by changing what you measure. Instead of measuring the outcome, which is invisible in the short term, you measure the action, the streak. The consistency itself becomes the reward.
So instead of asking, am I fitter yet? You ask, did I show up today?
Exactly. And did I show up today is a question you can answer with a yes every single day if you choose to. It's completely within your control, whereas am I successful yet is not. It depends on compounding that hasn't fully happened yet.
So you shift from measuring outcomes you can't control yet to measuring behavior you control completely.
And here's what happens when you do that. You start building what I'd call behavioral evidence. Every day you show up, you add one more piece of evidence to the case for a new identity. I am someone who writes. I am someone who exercises. I am someone who saves. And that identity is what makes the habit sustainable. Not willpower, not motivation, identity.
Because you don't have to motivate yourself to do things that are consistent with who you believe you are.
You just do them, the way you just brush your teeth. Not because you're motivated, because you're someone who brushes their teeth.
That identity piece is everything. I want to dig into it more because I think it's where most habit advice stops short. People are told what to do. Wake up early, exercise, read, meditate. But nobody tells them who to become in order for those things to feel natural.
Because the behavior always follows the belief. Always. If you believe you are someone who is lazy, disorganized, or undisciplined, you will unconsciously produce evidence for that belief every day. Not because you're a bad person, because your brain is designed to maintain consistency with its own self-image.
So changing the habit without changing the self-image is like trying to row a boat with the anchor still down.
Perfect analogy. You can row as hard as you want, but you're not going anywhere until you lift the anchor.
So how do you lift the anchor? How do you actually shift the identity?
Through small votes. Every action you take is a vote for a type of person, and you build a new identity the same way you win an election, not with one massive vote, but with thousands of small ones, consistently cast over time.
So you don't need to believe you're a writer before you write. You write one sentence, and that is one vote for the identity, I am someone who writes.
And then tomorrow, you write another sentence, 2 votes, and gradually the evidence accumulates until the identity is no longer something you're reaching for, it's something you actually believe.
And once you believe it, the behavior becomes almost effortless, because now you're not fighting your identity, you're expressing it.
That shift, from fighting your identity to expressing it, is where extraordinary results begin to feel almost inevitable.
Okay, I want to talk about something practical now, because I think people understand the theory of small habits, but stumble on the mechanics. How do you actually design a habit that sticks? Because I've tried to build habits dozens of times, and most of them have fallen apart.
Most people's habits fall apart for one of 3 reasons. The habit is too big, the trigger is unclear, or the environment is working against them. And all 3 of these are design problems, not character problems.
So if a habit keeps failing, it's not because you're weak, it's because it's poorly designed.
Exactly. So let's talk about design. First, size. The habit must be smaller than you think you need it to be. Not a little smaller, much smaller. If you think you should meditate for 20 minutes, start with 2. If you think you should run 3 miles, start with a walk around the block. If you think you should write 1,000 words, start with 1 sentence.
And people resist this because it feels like it can't possibly be enough.
But enough is the wrong question at the beginning. The right question at the beginning is, will I actually do this tomorrow? And the smaller the habit, the more honest your yes is.
Because you're not building the result yet, you're building the behavior. And you can always expand the behavior once it's automatic, but you can't expand a behavior you quit.
Precisely. The 2-minute version of the habit is not the destination, it's the door. You just need to open the door every day. What's behind it can grow over time.
The second design principle, the trigger. Tell me about that.
A habit without a trigger is just an intention, and intentions are the most fragile things in the world. They evaporate under pressure, exhaustion, distraction, and busyness. A trigger is what makes the habit automatic. It's the cue that tells your brain, this is the moment.
And the most reliable triggers are existing behaviors?
Yes, this is habit stacking. You attach the new habit to something you already do without thinking. After I pour my morning coffee, I will read for 10 minutes. After I sit down at my desk, I will write 1 sentence. After I get into bed, I will put my phone across the room. The existing behavior becomes the cue. And because the existing behavior is already automatic, it carries the new one with it.
So instead of relying on remembering to do the new habit, you're borrowing the momentum of something you already do.
Borrowing the momentum. I love that, yes. And momentum is exactly what it is. The existing habit is already moving. You just attach the new one to its motion.
And the third design principle, environment.
Environment is the one people most underestimate. Your environment is constantly sending you cues toward behaviors or away from them. And most people try to build habits through willpower while their environment is silently working against them.
Can you give an example?
Sure, you want to read more, but your phone is always on the table next to your chair, and your television remote is right there. and your book is in another room on a shelf. Your environment is saying, scroll, watch, scroll. The book isn't even visible. The habit has no chance against that environment.
So you change the environment before you try to change the behavior.
You put the book on the table. You put the phone in another room. You make the desired behavior the easiest, most visible, most frictionless option in the space. And suddenly, the habit doesn't require willpower. It's just what's there to do.
Environment design over willpower, every time.
Every time. Because willpower is a depletable resource. It runs out. It fluctuates with sleep, stress, hunger, and mood. Your environment doesn't. It stays constant. So design it for the person you want to become.
I want to talk about something that I think is the invisible ceiling that stops people from reaching extraordinary results, even after they've built good habits. And that's the question of patience.
Oh, this is so important.
Because building the habit is one thing. Trusting the process long enough for it to compound is another. And I think most people give up not because the habit stopped working, but because the results didn't arrive on the timeline they expected.
And expectations around timelines are almost always wrong, because we've been conditioned by stories of fast success, the overnight breakthrough, the viral moment, the sudden transformation. And those stories are real, but they are not representative. They are the lottery tickets, not the savings accounts.
And savings accounts build quietly, invisibly, until suddenly they don't.
Right. And the person who understands compounding doesn't panic when the account is small at month 3, because they understand that month 3 is not the destination. Month 36 is. And month 36 is only reachable through month 3.
You have to be willing to look unimpressive for a long time in order to become genuinely impressive.
And that requires a kind of faith that is very countercultural right now. Faith in the invisible. Trust in the process you cannot yet see the results of.
But it's not blind faith. It's informed faith, because you understand the mechanism. You understand that compounding is real, that identity shifts with consistent behavior, that the ice will melt. You just have to stay in the room long enough.
Stay in the room long enough. That's it. That's the whole secret of extraordinary success, dressed up in very ordinary clothes.
Small habits, consistent days, enough time. That's the formula. It's not complicated, but it is hard, because ordinary days, repeated, feel boring. And boring is the hardest thing to sustain in a world designed to sell you excitement.
The most extraordinary lives are often built in the most ordinary moments. The morning routine nobody photographs. The quiet hour of work before anyone else is awake. The book read 10 pages at a time. The savings added to, slowly, steadily, invisibly.
Until one day someone looks at your life from the outside and calls it extraordinary. And you know the truth. It was built from Tuesday mornings and 10 pages and one sentence at a time.
Built from the inside out. One small, faithful, ordinary day at a time.
I think I need to go fold some paper, Sophia.
Just one fold. That's all. Just one fold today. All right, everyone. Time for our vocabulary segment. Let's break down 5 words and phrases from today's conversation to sharpen your English.
First, compound, compounding.
Meaning. To compound means to grow by continuously building on what came before, not just adding, but multiplying. Compounding is the mechanism by which small, consistent inputs produce disproportionately large results over time. It starts slowly and then accelerates dramatically. In habits, each day you show up builds on every day before it, not just in skill, but in identity, in neural pathways, and in evidence about who you are.
First, compound, compounding. Meaning, to compound means to grow by continuously building on what came before, not just adding, but multiplying. Compounding is the mechanism by which small, consistent inputs produce disproportionately large results over time. It starts slowly and then accelerates dramatically. In habits, each day you show up builds on every day before it, not just in skill, but in identity, in neural pathways, and in evidence about who you are.
Example sentence. He only saved a small amount each month, but because he started early and let it compound, 30 years later, the result was staggering. Proof that consistency matters far more than size. Number 2, Trajectory.
Meaning, a trajectory is the path or direction something is moving in over time, where it is headed, not just where it is now. When we evaluate a habit by its trajectory rather than its current results, we ask, if I keep doing this, where will I be? A small habit with a powerful trajectory is worth far more than a dramatic effort with no consistent direction.
Example sentence. Her savings were small today, but her financial advisor told her what mattered wasn't the current number, it was the trajectory. If she maintained her habits, the destination would take care of itself.
Number 3. Habit stacking.
Meaning, habit stacking is the strategy of linking a new habit to an existing automatic behavior, using the established routine as a trigger for the new one. Because the existing habit already happens without conscious effort, it carries the new behavior with it, making the new habit far easier to remember and sustain than one that exists in isolation.
Example sentence. She had tried to build a journaling habit for years without success until she started stacking it on her morning coffee. The moment she picked up her cup became the cue to pick up her pen, and within weeks, the habit was unshakable.
Number 4. Friction.
Meaning, in the context of habits, friction refers to the resistance, difficulty, or inconvenience that stands between you and a behavior. High friction means a behavior is hard to start. Low friction means it requires almost no effort to begin. The key insight is that reducing friction for good habits and increasing friction for bad ones is one of the most powerful things you can do to change your behavior, often more effective than trying to improve your willpower.
Example sentence. He reduced the friction of his morning workout by laying out his clothes the night before. Removing that one small obstacle meant he never had an excuse not to start, and his consistency transformed.
And number 5, behavioral evidence.
Meaning, behavioral evidence refers to the real, lived proof you accumulate about who you are through your own actions. Every time you follow through on a small habit, you add one more piece of evidence to support a new identity. Over time, this accumulated evidence shifts how you see yourself, from someone who is trying to be a certain kind of person to someone who simply is that person, because the actions prove it day after day.
Example sentence. She had never thought of herself as disciplined until 6 months of showing up to write every morning without exception gave her enough behavioral evidence to genuinely believe it. The identity had been built one kept promise at a time.
Jason, I feel like I want to call my friend and tell her she just inspired a podcast episode.
She absolutely did. And I feel like I've been reminded of something I knew but hadn't been living. The small things are the things.
The small things are the things. Okay, here is your challenge. And it is beautifully, deliberately small.
We are going to ask you to do one thing, not a list, one thing.
Think about the habit you held in your mind at the beginning of this episode. The one small daily habit that would change your life most. Got it? Now shrink it. Take whatever you were thinking and make it smaller. If it was 30 minutes, make it 5. If it was a page, make it a paragraph. If it was a paragraph, make it a sentence. Make it so small that when you look at it, part of you thinks, this can't be enough. That feeling is the signal that you've sized it correctly.
And then, tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest, do it. Just once, just the small version. And then come to the comments and tell us what it is.
Name the habit. Name the trigger you're going to attach it to. And name how you're going to track it. A notebook, an app, a calendar, a jar with paper clips, anything.
Because the moment you write it in the comments, it becomes real. It has a witness. It has a community behind it. And habits with witnesses are habits that survive.
We will be in those comments, reading every single one. And in 30 days, come back and tell us what happened.
We genuinely want to know. Because your story, your 42 books, your finished project, your changed life, that story belongs here.
If this episode sparked something for you today, please share it. Send it to one person who has big dreams and hasn't started yet. It might be the Tuesday that changes something for them.
Subscribe so you never miss a conversation. We're here every week.
And here is the thought we want you to carry. You will not build an extraordinary life in an extraordinary moment. You will build it in the ordinary ones. The Tuesday mornings, the quiet 10 minutes, the single sentence before you go to sleep. Nobody will see it happening. The results will be invisible for longer than feels fair. And then, one day, they won't be. And someone will look at your life and call it remarkable. And you will know the truth. It was built from small things, repeated faithfully, long after the excitement wore off. Start the small thing. Do it today. Do it again tomorrow. Let the folding begin.
One fold. Just one fold today.
This is Sophia.
And Jason.
Signing off from the English Connect podcast.
Keep learning, keep growing, and today, do the small thing, especially because it feels too small. That's exactly why it works.